I'd like to introduce you to Gerard Batten, leader of UKIP at this present moment in time. I think Nigel Farage might be plotting against you. Welcome
Hello,
to our little show.
If someone's not plotting against you, you're not doing it properly.
It's not UKIP.
And I'm sure Theresa May will probably be sharing that view. Now, you're making headlines today after hiring a Tommy Robinson as an advisor, which apparently has prompted former UKIP leader Nigel Farage to call for your resignation. We'll get on to that in a moment. If reports are right, Robinson, real name Stephen Yaxley Lennon, will advise you on rape gangs and prison reform. And as I said on Twitter earlier, the latter I suspect Robinson knows more about than most, seeing as he was jailed for assault in 2005, jailed in 2012 for illegally entering the US on a false passport, jailed again in 2014 for mortgage fraud, and also has convictions for drug offences and public order offences. He has no convictions for rape, I am pleased to report, but the former EDL leader did reportedly lose his job as an airport baggage handler following an argument with an off-duty copper who apparently intervened in an alleged domestic assault between Yaxley Lennon and his then girlfriend. Since becoming leader in February, Mr Batten has had a series of high-profile figures he's seen leave UKIP amid criticism of the party's increasingly anti-Islamic messages. Mr Farage has said he was appalled by the appointment and said he's going to be lobbying UKIP officials to remove you, Mr Batten. So how's your Friday going?
Let me try and deal with that as quickly as possible. First of all, I haven't hired Tommy Robinson. I've asked him to be a personal advisor, so he's not a member of the party. He has no official position in the party. I just asked him to advise me on a personal basis on these things, and I felt it wouldn't be honourable to ask him to do that and then not say so, because why would somebody come and give them time and effort to you if you're not prepared to acknowledge them in public, which is why I made it public.
Why?
If you read out his charge sheet, by the way, there, which is quite impressive, but if you actually, I'm not going to go through all that, but if you read his book, Enemy of the State, you might understand, and people who want to do that understand that a lot of these charges are not quite kosher, if I can use that term. Some of them are a bit bogus. And the last time he was in prison for 4 months in solitary confinement, I actually went to the court when he handed a submission to the judge. We expected to be in there all day. The judge threw it upstairs to the Attorney General. There was no contempt of court. There was no case to answer. It's a political decision, and Tommy may well decide to sue the people that pursued him in this case, but that's his business.
You don't think with the string of convictions that he has, and I'm appalled that a leader of a political party should think the British justice system is corrupt and inept, but he does have a number of convictions. I don't think anyone's going to dispute that.
Not all of it. In fact, I've got tremendous faith in the English justice system, but that doesn't mean it doesn't mean to say that it doesn't make some terrible mistakes sometimes, because we all know that.
Do you want to be? I just want to know specifically which ones are the mistakes.
The mortgage fraud, for one, was a fit-up. He made his brother-in-law £20,000 to buy a house. His brother-in-law did what a lot of people done, allegedly a current member of the House of Lords, which is not tell entirely the truth about his income. Nobody lost any money. There was no fraud. The house was sold at a profit. Nobody lost any money. But he was pursued on that. And what he says in his book, which you can read, the police said to him, your wife's involved in this. We will charge her and put her in prison unless you plead guilty to the charge, which is what he did. That's all itemised in his book. It's a very good read. I recommend it.
I tend to go by the rule of law rather than people's very subjective opinions of the rule of law later. But what about, the appointment, when you think of all the different people that you could turn to for advice, what kind of message do you think choosing Tommy Robinson is going to send out to, let's be frank, the legions of UKIP supporters you have lost in recent years?
Well, we've been putting them back on since I became leader, actually. The party was expected to disappear. So I'm slightly how can I put it, bemused that Nigel has such concern for the party now when he walked away 2 years ago. He hasn't done anything for it in 2 years. It was about to disappear off the face of the earth. I saved it. We've saved it financially. We're putting more members on. We're going up in the polls. We were 8% in the polls last week. The reason that I've asked...
But you're going in a very distinct new direction that one might say where Nigel was right, with people like Tommy Robinson advising you personally, then the signs are that you are moving far right.
Well, we're not far right. I've never been far right. UKIP's not far right, and Tommy Robinson isn't far right. You may not like some of our policies or ideas. A lot of people don't like the fact that we want to leave the European Union, but it's not far right. I've never been far right. And Nigel's known me for 26 years, if I've known him. And whatever our...
You're a founding member of UKIP.
Exactly. And whatever our disagreements over the years, I don't think either of us would have ever levelled that charge at each other. Certainly not. One of the reasons I've asked Tommy to come on in this more high-profile manner is because he can help us connect with a lot more people out there. We are going to organise...
Racist, you mean by that?
No, that's not fair. Please, Matthew, look, to whatever Tommy is and you don't like him or don't agree with him, he's not a racist. He's never been
He's the former leader of the English Defence League.
Which was not a racist organisation when it started. The reason he left is because it was taken over and infiltrated by extremists. That's in the book as well. Now, we are organising a big pro-Brexit, the Great Brexit Betrayal rally on the 9th of December in London.
We haven't been betrayed yet, have we?
You're not looking at the news, Matthew.
Well, before we know, we could get no deal. That's what you wanted. So it'd be crazy to have a rally after no deal.
We want to keep up the pressure. And also what I want to do is get tens of thousands of those people out on that rally. And I want as many as possible to come and join UKIP and help us become a bigger, better force in UK politics.
We've addressed Tommy Robinson's experience of prison, an expert on prison life from the inside. You're getting him to advise on rape gangs, and yet it's been said that his demonstrations, they admitted contempt of court outside courtroom steps, could have prejudiced a rape trial that would have cost the British taxpayer hundreds of thousands of pounds.
There was two, wasn't there? There's the one at Canterbury, which he admits that he made a mistake because of his inexperience, because he was...
His inexperience at what? Demonstrating outside rape trials?
What you can and can't say outside a court or in the court precincts, and that was, he pleaded guilty to that, and he wasn't, I think he got a suspended sentence.
So a bloke who doesn't even have basic knowledge of the law of contempt is your advisor?
This was a couple of years ago when he did this, when he was forging his career as a journalist, which is what he wanted to do. Now, if I come back to the second one, the submission that he gave to that court proved that there was no contempt of court. And in fact, much worse contempt, real contempts of court, were committed by the Sun in the Leo Belfield case.
But it's not a competition, it's not a race to the bottom.
Hang on a minute.
It's not a judgment. I'm not sitting here to discuss the pros and cons of the Sun newspaper. That is a distraction.
Let me finish the point. Other people have been found guilty of contempt of court. They got £10,000 fines, like Rod Liddell in a magazine. They didn't go. Nobody's gone to prison for this.
This is diversion.
Nobody's gone to
instead
prison
of looking
for
at the
this
crimes
for the
of the
last
person
60
that
years.
you have hired as an advisor, you use diversion tactics to say, don't look at this, look over there, look at these things, which have nothing to do with what we're talking about. What we're talking about is you hiring someone who has either very limited knowledge of contempt of court or deliberately pretends he has no knowledge of contempt of court because he keeps going out there trying to prejudice rape trials, and that's a disgrace to the British taxpayer, let alone justice.
He admitted the first contempt of court. The second one, there was no case to answer, which is what I've just said. That's the facts of the matter.
So one.
And so
a string of time in prison. He doesn't understand the law of contempt. He left the EDL because we all believe he was appalled by the lurch to the far right, to the move to racism. And out of 65 million people in the UK, you choose him to be your advisor.
I've got lots of advisors and spokesmen. I've got 3 professors advising me on different subjects. Professor of medicine, a professor of economics. So I've got lots of people advising me, but of course he's the one that has taken the publicity this last day
I guess
or so.
If you get a professor of economics, they've got a proven record in economics. If you get someone who's been in prison, then you could say, well, I mean, it's one way of addressing the prisons crisis. Find someone who's been in a lot of prisons, then ask them for advice. But there are other ways, aren't there?
We've got
Howard Lee.
We have, I want for people who've got first-hand experience. We've got ex-policemen, ex-prison officers, ex-firefighters, people like that.
Does he get paid?
No, he doesn't. Absolutely not. I don't get paid. It's costing me money to do this, so I'm certainly not going to pay him.
Some people might think that only a nutter would do this and not get paid.
What, you mean my job or his job?
Yeah, your job or his job.
I did it.
Going around desperately telling people you're not racist, you're not far right, you're not Islamophobes and not being paid for it. Sounds exhausting.
I don't have to desperately go around saying that to people because anyone that knows me knows I'm not. So I don't go around apologising for what I'm not. Let's get that straight.
I'm getting to know you. And I'm trying to believe, are you... You've never said anything to me that's racist, but you align yourself with people like Geert Wilders.
Well, he isn't racist.
Well, he is guilty, I would say, of taking Islamic extremism, applying it to all people who follow Islam, and then treating them as if they were a race.
He doesn't do that, because I've known Geert Wilders for a long time.
I watched his video, and it certainly did that, which is why they tried to ban him from entering this country.
What it does is talk about the ideology. That's the problem, the ideology. And I've always approached it from that.
But it's how he frames that debate. It's with machine guns, it's with execution video clips held up, it's pictures of the mad mullahs as they were portrayed in the tabloid press.
He hasn't fabricated those clips, has he? They're real life things.
No, but it's the way he then, as I just said, Gerard, it's the way he then applies that to people who follow Islam as a whole, which is something I would say that Tommy Robinson is guilty of.
I have people come up to me who are Muslims who agree with what we're saying.
I'm sure you do.
Who agree with what we're saying about the ideology, but they're not in a position to do that because that it's too risky for them to do that.
Within the Christian faith, of course, you had those that thought it was acceptable to go around blowing up Protestants, then you had Protestants who thought it was acceptable to blow up Christians. I don't think either side is right.
If you want to get into a theological debate, which I don't,
you will find terror, really.
We will find no justification for violence in the Gospels. You'll find plenty in the Quran and the Hadith.
Gerard,
in the Gospels, Gospels will give you that. In the Old Testament, there's loads.
Yeah, but how many people do you know who live their life according to the Old Testament? I don't know anybody. There's plenty of people who live their life according to the Quran and the Hadith.
Gerard, in 2014...
How many do you know?
You had an 18% approval rate, you had 2 MPs, you had 24 MEPs, and you were on the march. Now you're down to a 2%, last year you were down to a 2% approval rating, you have no MPs, and the general perception is you lost your raison d'etre after we voted to leave the EU. Is not your appointment of Tommy Robinson just an attempt to harness his supporters to improve your flailing numbers?
First of all, I've only been leader of the party since February. All of that decline in support went on before me. I've actually picked it up. As I said, we're now increasing membership. Money is coming into the party. We're in the black. We're getting donors giving us money. And at our height in the 2015 election, we were on 12.9% of the vote. In opinion poll last week, we're on 8%. So I've made a good improvement on our record, and that's what I intend to go on doing.
But Tommy brings you numbers, is my point.
I want to bring on ordinary, decent, working-class people. I think if UKIP had a weakness in the past, it was maybe...
Why just working-class people? I mean, Nigel Farage is one of the least working-class people I've ever known.
Well, he works very hard, in actual fact.
Well, he's not working-class, though. That's a very disingenuous and ridiculous claim to make, that he's working-class. He's an ex-banker.
Well, people who work are working-class.
Really? So Prince Charles is working class because he works for the country, doesn't he?
Well, if somebody's working very hard, they're working, aren't they?
So you're trying to reduce the class structure to whether people work or not, which, with respect, is not how I understand the class structure.
Let me, perhaps, I'd finish the point, and then you can tell me why you disagree with it. What I want to do, if UKIP had a bit weakness in the past, in my view, it was perhaps seen as a kind of an alternative Tory party, which it never was, because I've never been a Tory, never been a member of the Tory party, and lots of UKIP people weren't. What I want to do is to broaden the appeal out across the board. People who work, people who are unemployed but would
only
like
to
a
the working
job,
class. You yourself
people
said
who
working
small
class
or medium class.
You yourself said
small
working
or medium
class.
Business owners.
You said yourself
yes,
working
ordinary
class.
people, for want of a better term.
I'm an ordinary person, and Kevin's an ordinary person.
And you work, so you're working class then.
Yeah.
Okay. My parents would be appalled to hear that.
That you're working class?
Do you have a message?
Yeah,
do you have a message for Nigel Farage, who seems to want you gone?
Well, as I said, I'm a bit bemused about why he's taking such an interest now when he's had no interest for the last 2 years.
To be fair, he commented on Paul Nuttall.
He is going to now write to the NEC. These are the people that in the not too distant future, just a few months ago, he was describing as very low grade people and part of a swamp that needs to be drained. So I think they might not necessarily receive his letter with the approval that he might think.
Do you find it peculiar that as we edge towards Brexit, which the British people have voted for, how many of our political parties have been riven down the middle? I mean, UKIP seems to be divided, Labour is divided, the Tories are divided. It's a very divided time. And do you ever think that maybe UKIP is partly to blame for that?
The one party that isn't divided on the European Union is UKIP. Everybody in UKIP wants to leave, and we're putting on more members all the time. I think we are moving into divisive times in politics, and I think that's not down to a political party. That has been down to the fact that we've been part of the European Union for 45 years, and that's been a cancer at the heart of politics because we have transferred our sovereignty over and our lawmaking ability to Brussels.
Any specific laws that bother you?
This is what has riven society, in my view.
Any specific laws? Because I look at it in a slightly different way. I just see it as the most prosperous part in British history ever, and that seems to be something that might be worth hanging on to.
Do you want to know the one thing that really gets me going and makes me passionate? I'll tell you, the European arrest warrant. In this country over centuries, we established that you can't be arbitrarily arrested, you can't be arbitrarily imprisoned.
But we were quite well off, weren't we, the last 50 years?
Can I finish my point? Now,
I did mention about the distraction thing where I asked is it the most prosperous...
you asked me a question which I'm answering. You asked me which particular law I could name.
I thought you weren't answering. So, OK, you carry on.
That was what I was question I was trying to answer. Under a European arrest warrant, any British citizen can be carted off on the strength of an accusation on a piece of paper to a foreign jail. That is contrary to the whole British legal system, which was there to protect the innocent as much as to convict the guilty.
But it has been a fabulously wealthy and prosperous time.
That's had nothing to do with the European Union.
Okay, lovely meeting you, Gerard Batten.